first thing that I did was the goggles. I made these a few days ahead so we had enough time to dry. I'm using a round cutter, but if you don't have one, you can use a cup that's about the size that you need. I lightly mark the outside and then I use a cutter to do the middle. Because that top side looked nicer, I turned it over and I fit some toothpicks. If you're doing this for sale, you should use some pasta, and I left it to dry on top of some baking paper. Because this is a Minion doctor, I decided to make stethoscopes. I made them quite small, so it's a good idea for small things like this to make 2 of everything, because it's a big risk that it could break. I made 6 chocolate cakes. I'll leave a recipe on the description below. After I put 3 cakes, I got a piece of polystyrene. I made a hole in the middle and I covered with some foil, and this is to give support to the cake. You can also use a cake board and cut the size that you need. I'm also using 4 plastic dolls for the bottom of the cake and 3 for the top. And to finish it off, I put one long one right in the middle. It is always a good idea to have a guide when you're carving the cake. I still made my one a bit wider than anticipated, but it was good to have a guide. And also, while I was carving it, there was some parts of the cake that came off, and it's just easy. You can just glue them back on the cake. I did the crumb coat, and I like to use a piece of acetate to help, especially a cake like this that's round like that, and it really helps with the acetate. I had an initial plan for my Minion to be Dave, but then he ended up being Bob, but it's okay. So I marked the sides of there where the goggles were going to be, and that was a lot easier to cover the top first with the fondant and then the rest of the body. I should have left the cake in the fridge for longer, but because I was in a hurry to finish, I damaged a little bit while I was trimming the top. I saw this and I thought it was a really good idea to make the arms like that, putting a couple of skewers on the side and some fondant, and then covering it with the rest of the fondant around the body and then shaping the arm. If you want a bigger arms, you just put a bit more fondant underneath. To do the trousers, if you get an extra pair of hands, will be great to help you out. To make the Minion jumpsuit, I measured the cake and then I made a template on some baking paper. I used the back of the skewer to make that effect like stitches. For the pockets, I also made a template, and I only put water along the bottom there to make that effect of an open pocket. My camera was not recording that part when I made the legs. As you can see, I made sort of like a cone shape and then I cut that out, that middle bit where the feet were going to be. I thought it was a good idea, instead of doing the Guru logo, is to use the initials of the person that is going to have a birthday. That stethoscope that I made in the beginning, I decided to place it inside the pocket there, and for the arms, for them to rest on something, I made this little bag. It's a first aid kit. Those those goggles that I made, I placed them gently on the icing just to mark there where I was going to put them, and then I made the hole a bit longer with a skewer. For the eyes, I measured a circle that was going to fit there in the middle. I put a smaller piece of fondant on the back to make the eyes pop out a little bit. For the eyes, you can choose the direction where they're going to look. I chose mine to be looking up. I put smaller black circles in the middle, and I decided to paint both eyes green, light green first, and then the detail on the outside with the darker green. For the other side, I decided to make a defibrillator. And I added all the small details. I always think that the details make the cake, so the more small things that you add, the better the cake you will be. I made a grey strip to cover the gaps around the goggles. And to make it a bit more like a metallic color, I sprayed it with some color mist. To make the buttons, I decided to make them white, and for them to be shiny like that, I sprayed them with the same color mist.